Hi, I'm Britton LaRue, and this is Moon to Moon. Moon to Moon is a space to consider, celebrate, and share the ways we come home to ourselves, anchor through change, and uncover our power. 1 month, one phase, one loving step at a time. Hello, Moon to Moon. It's Britton, and I am here under an Aries moon right at my ascendant and trining the sun in Leo, exactly. I am here with you now to bring you an episode that is going to be primarily focused on where I am with my work on astrology and shame. It's going to have 3 parts, is how I'm seeing it in my mind's eye. There's going to be a kind of a situating of where we are right now, here at the beginning of Leo season, coming out of Cancer. And I want to share with you some of the things that have been on my heart, on my mind, feeling into the connection between Cancer and Leo, and how powerful these 2 signs and the bridge between these 2 signs is as a space for contemplating shame in ourselves and in our world. And in there, I'll share just an update on things in my life, just some personal sharing. Moon to Moon has always been a space of personal sharing. Then I want to speak about unshaming the signs and just honor where I am in the project and tell you a little bit about how it came about for anyone who is really just uncovering unshaming the signs and diving in and wanting to hear more from me about it, like at a big picture level and where it's going. And then I want to talk about a new project, a brand new project that I'm going to be introducing and doing here in Moon to Moon, which is going to go to another level with thinking about astrology and shame. So I'm really excited to do that introduction here. And I want this whole episode to be a support for those who are finding out about the project that I'm going to be doing here on Moon to Moon and want to hear me talk about it at a high level. So if you're a regular Moon to Moon listener, maybe a returning listener after a long break, or if you're a new listener to Moon, welcome to this space. So here we are in the beginning of Leo season, coming out of Cancer with 2 full moons in Capricorn. Wowza. What a time that we're living in. You can barely keep up with the shifts. It's, I always felt like summer was a reset for me. Like I was going into kind of a dissolving space with myself, and have always felt like I kind of come out in August, like a new person. And then I learned about astrology, and I also have Cancer as my 4th house sign. And I'm kind of I'm like in a working research lab, curious with listeners. Feel free to email me, DM me. It feels to me like that fourth house time is just such a death and rebirth time. I feel like my year begins in Leo season in many ways. Like I start to reemerge to my eroticism, which is to say my life force energy, my heat, my throb, what gets me going in Leo season. And then in that space, I start to understand who I am now. It's like the fire guides me into a picture of where I'm going now and like who I even am now. And as my business grew over the last few years, and for those who may be new to my work, I discovered astrology in late 2017, gave my first like very, very, very low cost reading. I think it was May of 2018. A couple months later, started an Instagram account. A few months after that, started a newsletter. And it was about 3 years in that I became able to quit my full-time university teaching gigs. And then as I've been able to understand that like this dream I have is one that I'm going to be able to, that I am manifesting. Like this is happening. I'm able to support myself. Like who knew? I always was such a baby about like money and accounting and terrified to be responsible for providing for myself. Like at midlife, I reimagined what's possible for me and began to vision myself as someone who provides for myself and someone who can provide for her daughters and someone who could be like a full partner in a romantic relationship. And so as my dream grew, I began to ask questions from a place of desire with my business, you know, where in the beginning stages, it's just like, will this ever happen? And like, I worked every day of the year, often like 10, 14-hour days from a place of full passion. I began to want to ask different questions of my relationship to my business that were going to be providing me opportunities to feel from pleasure and desire, also what it would be like to rest, what it would be like to play, what it would be like to have periods where everything just kind of drops and goes way more quiet while I tend to other parts of myself, knowing that my passion and my work will be there for me on the other side of those things. And so it became a dream of mine to be someone who could basically take the entire season of Cancer off. Just like, what would it be like to not work? Cancer season. How could I arrange my schedule? I didn't. So what I'm getting to is I gave that to myself this year. I was able to provide this for myself. And through my school. And it wasn't 100% off. It was about 90% off though. And like, wow. I like really went to these new places in myself, or these unvisited places in myself for a while, including going to places, traveling, spending way more time with my daughters and family, with my partner, Matt. And, it was, quite an experience, and really just an experience of pride too, to be able to allow myself to just set things down. And, I thought about like lining up my Instagram with planned stuff so that, it would like appear like I'm still on or something. And it was like, no, I want to be like visibly quiet. I want it to be felt that I'm on rest, because that's what I was on. So, yeah, but it's an interesting thing. Like, have you found it to be true? Like, you finally finish this major project and then like you get sick, or, you finally, this thing that you had to see through is done. And then like tragedy happens, or, like something comes up that you normally like would have had a really harder time dealing with it, and that happened in my life. I really sad to share with you all that my buddy passed away a couple of weeks ago, and my dog Buddy, who was sometimes in the background and moon to moon, because I record these solo shows in my bedroom, and he was always next to me. And maybe you saw Buddy in the background, or heard Buddy in the background in one of my classes. Maybe you saw pictures of Buddy that I've shared, or heard me talk about Buddy. And, there's never a good time. And it was very sudden. And it's been really, really awful. But it's not all bad. Grief is just like... Listener, I imagine you know grief, and maybe you've known an animal who was like a soul animal for you. So sending love to all the grievers, which is everyone. It's such a wild and weird part of human life. And yeah, I've been feeling in many ways so much tenderness for human beings who walk into these relationships. Like, we walk into love knowing that there will be loss, and there will be pain. It's like we're often so hard on humans, but surely this is one of the most beautiful things about human beings. So yeah, I've been really just allowing the grief to take hold, and let it do what it wants through me. Which is not a thing that I gave my younger self. I never, for whatever reason, because I was pregnant, had a child, was, entering junior year of high school, was trying to finish a degree, my younger self just really was good at compartmentalizing and dissociating from the feelings, and feelings are my life now, In many ways, I'm a professional feeler. And so I know what to do, and that's like really about listening and allowing and just letting things run as they do, and like just deep respect for the process, and just taking it real gentle. As you know, I'm not in Cancer anymore, so I'm moving back into more of that space of being quote unquote on, but really just holding everything gently. And when I want to create something, hold the space, doing it. I mean, I fucking love what I do, I'm so grateful for the appointments on my calendar. I'm so grateful for most of the items on my to-do list. I just can't wait to get up in the morning every day and do those things. And so for the most part, I'm so grateful to have these obligations because they allow me to be with my gifts, and most of my gifts involve being in my heart and being in a lot of love. And I'm really happy to be given the opportunity to do that. And then just letting some afternoons kind of slide into rest, whoa, wasn't really planning to be napping this afternoon. But I feel so grateful to be able to do that. And it just feels like it's healing me now, but it's also healing my younger self who didn't think I could do that, didn't think that the world could wait for me, didn't think that I had permission. And I especially feel this when it comes to socially. Just sometimes I just feel like I don't really want to talk. I'm happy to be with people, and just allowing myself to not hold the table with my voice and hold the table with my smile, and just really just let myself be how I feel, which is not a problem, So it's been very moving, and I'm learning how to kind of release the parts of me that are reaching out to feel the extension of my body that was this animal near me, and listening for ways in which that relationship will now shift into one with the spirit realm. And not rushing that process, because at a human level, now is the time to just feel super bummed, and I'm going to feel that. So that's where I am. It's had me reflecting a lot about grief, and I was giggling with Matt that grief is the new shame. And this is a reference to shame. This was a reference for me 2 years ago when I started to just be obsessed with shame, and shame being the doorway. The doorway we need is the shame doorway. We need to walk through the shame doorway to see what's on the other side for us. And back then I was joking. It's funny, not funny, right? It's funny, not funny. We have to be able to be lighthearted. That shame is the new trauma. And what I mean by that, orange is the new black, is that I had been obsessed with trauma for several years and learning everything I could about trauma and how to be trauma informed and how to release trauma and how to sit with trauma lodged in my body, how to be a body that people can co-regulate against as they release their own trauma, like how to be a space holder who is trauma informed and educated and trained. And so then as I got into shame, it was like, shame's the new trauma. I'm obsessed with shame now. And then now I'm like, is grief the new shame? Because in many ways, I think what is beneath shame is grief. I was reflecting on my run today that I wonder for our younger selves, the ones who first experienced the shame, different forms of shame, the ones who were first witnessed as shameful or watched others be shamed and were witnesses to that. I wonder if at some level it was easier to understand ourselves as bad, if it was more digestible for us to understand the world in terms of good and bad binary, then it was, I wonder if it was more digestible for us than to hold the grief and the sorrow that this world was turning out to not be a place of compassion, of like the generosity of wanting to understand and attune to the child who was new to this world and just wanted to do a good job of being here, shining our light with one another. Because I do wonder if underneath shame is that grief, the grief that we have to have the shame police to create order on the planet. And that we aren't a more emotionally wise set of beings who can hold nuance, paradox, and compassion, who can sit and listen to understand what's going on in the being that we're that's being pointed to and called out. Yeah, running hypothesis. And this brings me to this time that we're in. And how every year I really feel shame so strong in Cancer and Leo seasons, collectively and personally and interpersonally. And it feels like this makes quote unquote sense to me, because Cancer is the sign ruled by the moon, and Leo is the sign ruled by the sun. And these being the two luminaries, these being the celestial bodies that feel most present to us, they're the most visible to us, they're the most visceral to us. That it's difficult for us to really embody the way of these signs, because we have cultivated so many reasons why there's something wrong with us, like why we can't trust ourselves to, why we shouldn't be allowed to. Maybe if I could just fix what's wrong with me, maybe I'd be more deserving, maybe I'd be more worthy, maybe I'd have a right to take up more space. If I could just figure out how to do it perfectly, then fill it in, you know? If I could just blank, then blank. We have so many conditions for why we feel separated from being in the world. And I think that, you know, these are consequences of the shame lens. And this, my interest in shame was really, it's really been my guiding thing from the start, because from the beginning of my interest in astrology, I was at a time where I was trying to figure out how to have compassion for myself, how to forgive myself. I knew that if I wanted to cultivate new ways of being in this world and not repeat old patterns, that my hyper-disciplinary approach to, like, quote unquote, working on myself had not worked. Like, the evidence was in. The evidence was in hyper-disciplinary critique and judgment of myself was not taking me to, like, expansive, rich, pleasurable places in my life. And I felt like astrology came in as it was like drinking it was changing me in a cellular way, helping me to have more compassion for myself. And my longing to be of service through one-on-one, but from the beginning I always imagined I would become a teacher and a writer of astrology primarily, which is what I am now. That what it would be would be like the language itself contains the frequency and, like, some kind of magic codes that unfurl us enough to have a more compassionate relationship to our human experience and to our stories. And so from the beginning, it was always like, how can I support others in loving themselves more so that we can create a more loving world? I think astrology can help me with this, you know? And that was always what was guiding me from the beginning, but I wasn't using the word shame, because what I've now learned is, like, shame is so skilled as a spell that we don't even know how it's like, it is the lens through which we see reality. And so until you begin noticing it at play in like your perceptions, your takeaways, your motivations, you don't even realize that you're coming from a place of your own shame. So it's like, it's deep and it's very unconscious to us in many ways until we start, like, getting into it. So what I was seeing is that it was difficult for those who came into my space to relate to their charts in any other way besides their own shame. And the chart came to feel like a site of projection for shame, for failure, for flaws, for problems, for the anticipation of difficulty. And I felt like what I was just always wanting to do is to reframe that perspective by speaking the language in a way that was like love. It just like could come through as a love language. Not just all sweetness, like a lot of unshaming is extremely confronting. It can be extremely uncomfortable because it's very confronting, because it's a language that wants to be spoken as truth. And so my spaces have always been sort of like confronting spaces, as well as love spaces. And so in many ways, they're also like very brave spaces, because they are, they involve so much self-confrontation. But when it's done through the medium of astrology, and it's spoken in a way that feels like love and compassion, and it connects our pain stories, our shame stories, to these larger pictures writ across the sky. When we become the whole sky through the way we're relating to the language, it's like the shame like breaks up, as it connects to this greater thing, is how it felt. So, as many of you know then, starting in the spring of 2023, I announced in Instagram that I was doing a new thing called Unshaming the Signs, and that it would be 12 months, and we were going to do sign by sign. At this time, I felt it was really important to focus on the signs, because I see the signs as ways of being human, not as personality traits. It's not like, oh, you're a Pisces, so you are like this, this, and this. That to me feels very cornering. And anything that's cornering to me is not going to be helpful, especially because it's not going to be expansive. No. So framing the signs as ways of being human, and then feeling into how we're all the signs, because the whole sky surrounded us when we were born. Our chart has every sign in it. We go through transits and we go through periods of time where even in signs where we don't have any placements, we're still having things happen through that sign, so that we're all signs. And we can find, we can notice, we can connect to, talk to, relate to the parts of us that have shame in every single way of being that is every single sign. In the exquisite geometry of the zodiac, the infinite, the utterly infinite of all possible ways of being can be distilled down to 12. And we can find a way of being that we're ashamed of in all of them. And what I found to be true is that the most helpful thing possible is simply to connect with the part of us that is hurting today, in that shame place today. It's not like, oh, I'm going to unshame all of my Leo, and then I'm going to be done unshaming Leo, and then I'm going to unshame Virgo and me, and then I'm going to be done with unshaming Virgo and me. It's like, no, it's all the whole time we're alive, and it's just the little thing that's up today. It's just that part of us that's up today. And the truth is, to me, unshaming is the same thing as inner child healing. It is relating to the part of us that is actually a younger version of us that interpreted reality through the shame lens, that there was something wrong about us, that we don't have permission to do something, that we don't, that's just not who we are, that we just don't do those things. And noticing how that part of us is hurting. Why? Because we're feeling so limited, We're feeling so limited by a story of, I guess this is just not going to be who I am. And you can see how painful this is for unshaming Leo when we're talking about this is a way of being the sun. From a chart delineation technique, wherever your sun is in your chart, whatever sign and house that it's in, your sun is interested in the house and the affairs of where you are Leo. Your sun wants to express through Leo. And the way that it can most effectively do this is to shine through the sign that your sun is in and through the affairs of the house that it happens to be in. So it's like, for me, I'm a Pisces 12th house sun. The more that I expand myself mystically into unconscious states, altered states, the more I listen to the dream realms, the more I unearth things that have been hidden, the more I connect to spirit languages, fill it in. The more I do this in ways that open my solar heart up, that expand me and help me really feel myself in these states, the more I'm supporting my creative life, because I have Leo in the 5th house of creativity. And it's also going to help me with my parenting because 5th house is also parenting your children. Hobbies, romance, and this I have found to be true. So come learn astrology with me if you want to go deeper there. But shame is a big one for Leo because it has so much to do with simply expressing our big hearts. Simply being able to, I say simply, but it's not simple. Being able to sit down inside of ourselves. It's a fixed sign. Sit down inside of ourselves and just express warmth through us as we play, as we create, as we feel into exuberance and joy. And a lot of that is not doing anything. It's not achieving. It's being able to sit down and simply be in the warmth of our presence. And often what feels so good about that is the way that we share ourselves and also listen to the people around us. Those that are constellated to our light, that want to rub their hands in our warmth, to feel that good feeling. It feels good. It feels good to be near a bonfire. We are bonfires to each other, says Leo. But I found it to be true that we're not very good listeners and we're not super great at being present when shame has us constantly trying to fix ourselves, constantly trying to prove things, constantly trying to take, or constantly trying to shrink. That thinks that we don't deserve to, or that nobody will want the warmth that we're bringing. All of those are the distortions of shame. The distortions of shame. And they hurt us personally, and they hurt us collectively. And they're deeply hurtful interpersonally, this shame. Now, I don't hate shame. Actually, that could be a takeaway because we're talking about unshaming. But I think to hate shame is already kind of beginning unskillfully, let's say. Because to me, nobody's ever made their shame go away by being mad at it, angry with it, banishing it, criticizing it, and making it a big problem. Unshaming comes from gentleness, listening, being present with, being in compassion, attunement. And a lot of those things we can struggle to do because we also struggle at a moon level, Cancer, at trusting that it's safe to attune and be attuned to. So yeah, Cancer, Leo, that's some big stuff, especially in the unshaming world. But the great news is, like, we are repairing. And I saw this in all the 12 workshops I did all year round. And now I'm just seeing it reverberate through my communities, because so many of the people who sign up now for my stuff, like Magician's Table in the spring, my Underdog to Diva coaching container right now, year 1 of Emergence Astrology, so many people were attracted to it because they found their way to it through Unshaming the Signs. And like, it's in the room with us. Like, even if I'm not talking about it, people are there for this unfurling, this softening, this opening, this flowering, which is the flowering of self-compassion for ourselves and for our world, because it's super, super, super fractal. How we treat ourselves is how we treat other people. So right now with Unshaming the Signs, I've been listening to like what's going to happen to it now. And one of the things that's happening is it's on the road with me. I've been to Chicago with a workshop, and now I'm going to Minneapolis. If you're in the Twin Cities area, I'm going to be there Saturday, August 3rd, 10 to 12 at the Future, one of my most favorite metaphysical shops in the United States of America. So proud. Oh my God, the dream of my younger self. Also in Minneapolis, I'm going to be teaching at like a team teaching with my first cousin, Barrett Algren, who is going to be leading yoga. And I'm going to be teaching on building a home for the magical child within, for Leo. So that's in the evening on August 3rd, 5:30 to 7:30. So if you're in the Twin Cities area, please join it. I'll put links in the bio. Seats are limited. And then I'm going to New York City at some point, but we haven't nailed the date down. I'm going to be speaking with like the largest astrology club in the New York City. Super cool. Stay tuned. I'm hoping to go to LA and Portland. I think those are, and Boston, Salem as well. So I think probably that's all I have time for in 2024. But I'm really excited to be doing that in person and seeing how it shifts. I'm hoping at some point I'm going to create a specific teaching container for Unshaming the Signs. But right now I'm kind of wanting to do some different things, like the Visiting Cities in-person events. And then I'm now going to announce my next project, which is Unshaming the Houses. So this is really exciting. This actually came from the Chicago workshop, so you know who you are if you're listening. One of the women who came and was sitting next to me wondered if I'd ever thought about doing Unshaming the Houses. And we had this whole conversation. It was like a break, so we were just talking casually. And it just really lit me up. So I listened for a little while, and then I was like, I just really want that to be on Moon to Moon. And I want to invite the astrological community to participate. So I'm officially announcing now that starting very soon, I'm going to be doing one house at a time, unshaming the houses, and each episode will have a different astrologer who I admire and who I enjoy hanging out with. And we are going to talk about shame that can come up in the realm of life signified by that house. So that is really exciting because it's taking this conversation about shame to another level. And what it brings up is something that came up when I did Unshaming the Signs on the astrology podcast with Chris Brennan. One of the biggest achievements, I guess you could say, honors, I can also say, of my career so far is being on the astrology podcast. That came out in March. If you want to go find it, so many people have come into my community from that episode. Such an incredible experience. But one of the things I wanted to do in that conversation is to start the conversation by talking about shame in astrology. Because in many ways, shame participates in the shame. Astrology participates in the same shame discourse as like everything else, And here we are, very much wanting to be supportive to people, but we often use language and we often throw words around and we often compete with one another in ways that are shaming. And I think this is going to be probably up in all the conversations because I'm excited to hear how the different astrologers that come in want to talk about that, and I'm excited to hear how shame shows up for them with the house that we're looking at, how shame shows up through the different placements that we have in that particular house. Like how does, if you have Sun there, or if you have the South Node there, or if you have Pluto in that house, how might the nuances of shame shift for the affairs of that house, depending on the placement that you have there. And of course, we'll also be looking at the sign there being, of course, so important. And so that's why this is like an extension of Unshaming the Signs, because the more you are familiar with Unshaming the Signs, the more you can apply what you learned there then to the houses that we're looking at. So this is going to be super fun because it's like an opening, I feel like it's like a real opening of the forum to allow other brilliant minds and hearts come in and share things that they see, things that they think are important to talk about, things that they want to have mentioned in conversations about shame, which is of course going to be beyond whatever I could be offering as a leader of this conversation. So, those of you who know my work know that I love long-term projects. I love long containers. I love commitment. My Capricorn moon just gets super turned on by the distance. We're going the distance. Which is why Chris Brennan was such a perfect person to bring me on, because Chris goes, it was a 4-hour plus episode and I needed to partner with somebody who was not going to get tired, we're just actually going to talk that long, because we're going the distance. So yeah, this project probably will take 4 or 5 months. I don't want to put it all out at one time. I'm going to just put them out as they're ready. And so there'll be episodes between them, and it's also going to have that emergent quality of a podcast conversation where, you're following a structure, but it's also just a conversation, and you're responsive to the other human being and the things that they bring that you weren't planning to go there. And the way maybe if you were doing like a collaboration with a class, like you would have things more planned out and you would like have deliberate conversations in advance to prepare because it's a container, you know. A podcast conversation to me is exciting because it's emergent, because there's like a degree of planning, but it's mostly just two humans in a moment seeing what happens, you know, and that feels really fun and exciting to think about offering within the like larger committed container of 12 whole episodes. So I'm honored to be announcing that and bringing that here. My hope with it is that it becomes like a larger extension of these teachings that I've been engaging with and the conversation that I've been engaging with those who've been wanting to come play with me. Those who have been engaging in the comments in Instagram, or who have been attending or buying the recordings of the Unshaming the Signs workshops, which you can still get. I mean, they're super potent and evergreen. Those of you who have been in other types of groups with me where we talk about unshaming the signs and unshaming. Other podcast hosts who've invited me to come and talk about shame, like Samar Jade and Letting Chiron Sing, or Sabrina Monarch of Magic of the Spheres. I feel incredibly honored to be the steward of this discussion and to be taking it to new places, and doing it like differently as we expand the topic and invite more voices in. So I hope that you're feeling pumped, and I hope that you enjoy and feel supported by the conversations that come forward there. Yeah, I think that, let me just sit a second and feel into anything else I might have wanted to add. Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. I'm feeling pretty good. I also just want to share that the woman on the other side of me at the Chicago workshop, we all went around and introduced ourselves, and she was like, I was very scared to come to this. She was like, at first when I heard about it, I was like, who wants to spend their Saturday talking about their shame? And I just loved that was like aired out in the room, because it's probably something everyone is feeling a little bit of. And it really is something now and then I sit back and think about, just like, yeah, I just like really love having conversations about presumably really difficult things. I guess I've always been that person, you know, at the cocktail party that some people are gravitating to and everyone else is like fleeing. Yep, c'est moi. Yeah, it's so fun for me though to be in a space with like such permission to like go there, because if we're going to be talking about shame, like we are going there. We've all agreed to it. We've consented to this, you know, like, let's go. And just allowing everyone who interacts with the topic to engage with it to the degree that they feel available for it in a moment. It's like degrees. We have degrees of availability to this topic by day, by season, by period of our lives. And it feels true that the medium of podcasting can be a really powerful way to invite in anyone that's like really nervous about an actual like paid container, like an actual, oh my gosh, now I'm stuck in a room with these people. I guess Zoom, it's easier to just like slip out the door. But even in Zoom, there's this degree of like captive audience, like shit, I hope I made the right choice. I mean, I totally resonate with that. I mean, if I wasn't holding the container myself, I get it. Do I want to go talk about this with these people, And many come to learn, like, actually, I really do. Like, many of you listening, in fact, may be people who've realized, like, yeah, these are exactly the people that I want to talk about this with. Like, oh, what a gift. Like, what a gift that I found these people to talk about this with, because this feels really good, But not everybody's in that place. And a podcast forum feels like a really powerful opportunity to just put something into the world that someone can engage with, like, at any pace they desire, and just allow, just to see what happens. Like, how did that feel? How did that feel? Do I want more? Like, do I feel done after, like, is 10 minutes all I actually needed on this? Sometimes, like, that openness, like that kind of freedom makes things possible that otherwise wouldn't be possible, And so that feels really exciting about bringing this to Moon, is that for anyone who has wanted to go deeper, but it's just like fucking scary, I'm like, do I really want to put my money or my time on the line if I'm not really sure? Then this can provide a space for that kind of door to open, just the amount that it needs to. It doesn't need to be any more. And I think that that's such a crucial part of healing when it comes to these parts of us that are holding the shame, that want to be seen. That's what they want, is they just want to be seen. They want to be attuned to. They want to be heard. They want to feel that their experience was valid. They're not asking us to say that they were perfect. They're not asking us to say that they did nothing wrong. Although some parts of us really did nothing wrong, right? Like, it's really about just the opportunity to be seen in our human experience. To be seen from that frequency of compassion and generosity and curiosity, something that we maybe were not given at important moments of our childhood, adolescence, and at any stage of adulthood too. But when one has not practiced this before or experienced how this is possible, I can totally sympathize with how it might feel when you haven't experienced something yet. There's so much fear because you don't have evidence. So inviting anyone listening who is curious to let unshaming kind of tap at your hearts. Maybe some of you are like already in, you're like already here, you're like waiting for the notification on your phone for the first one to come in, which will probably be sometime around the new moon in Leo, because Leo was really, really central in our conversation. So I really want it to come out soon. Inviting you to come play, and let me know how the project lands for you. All right then. Well, I'm wishing you all the very best. Sending you lots and lots of love wherever you are. Compassion with yourself. It's a very tiring time. It's a very triggering time. And here we are. So calling in gentleness along with any other emotions like rage. And thank you. Thank you so much. If you love Moon to Moon and you haven't left a review before or a rating, I would be so grateful. Thank you to those of you who recently have been reviewing. It's so fun to receive these new reviews. And my heart